The rain had not stopped for 3 days, and Alira liked it that way. Rain kept people indoors. Rain kept her children close. In the small wooden house at the edge of the wildwood, she stirred a pot of soup, while 8 pairs of eyes watched her from the floor, waiting for their turn to eat. "One at a time," she said, smiling despite her tiredness. "There is enough for everyone." Her eldest, a boy named Torin, helped her hand out the bowls. He was only 4, but he acted older, always watching the door, always listening for danger, the way she had taught him. The other 7 pups, born together in one exhausting night 5 years ago, tumbled over each other with the noisy joy only children could have, unaware that their mother's hands sometimes shook when she thought no one was looking. Alira did not remember much from before the pups were born. She remembered pain. She remembered running through trees with blood in her mouth and fear in her chest. She remembered waking in a stranger's hut with wounds across her side and no memory of her own name, only a faint golden mark on her wrist that meant nothing to her until Bram told her it was a mating mark. "You belonged to someone," he had said gently, "all those years ago. But whoever they were, they are gone now. No one came looking." She had believed him. There was no reason not to. She built a life instead of chasing ghosts. She learned to hunt, to trade, to protect herself, and, later, the 8 small lives depending on her. The outcast village accepted her without questions, the way it accepted everyone who no longer belonged anywhere else. Bram, quiet and steady, became her closest friend, and though she saw the way he looked at her sometimes, she never let herself wonder what it meant. She had enough to carry already. That evening, after the pups were finally asleep in their shared bed, Bram appeared at her door, water dripping from his jacket. "There's a patrol near the eastern ridge," he said. "Blackthorn wolves. They're not usually this far south." Alira's stomach tightened. Patrols meant danger. Any patrol from any pack could decide her settlement was worth clearing out, and outcasts had no one to protect them but themselves. "How many?" "6. Maybe 7. Bram hesitated. "Their alpha is with them." "The king himself?" Alira had heard stories of the Blackthorn Alpha King, a name spoken with both fear and respect. Cold, ruthless in war, unmated, though he was said to be the strongest wolf in the northern territories. She had never had reason to think of him as anything more than a distant rumor. "We should move the children somewhere safer tonight," Bram said, "just in case." But it was already too late. The knock at her door was soft, almost polite, which somehow made it more frightening. When Alira opened it, lightning cracked across the sky behind a tall figure in a dark coat, rain running down a face carved from sharp angles and old sorrow. For one heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then his eyes found hers, and something in him seemed to shatter. "Alira," he whispered, as though testing whether the word would break apart in his mouth. She did not know his voice. She did not know his face. But her wolf, silent for 5 years, rose inside her chest like a wave breaking after a long, still calm, howling a name she could not remember but somehow already knew belonged to her. She stumbled back, gripping the doorframe. "Who are you?" The man, Kale, though she did not yet know his name, stepped forward, then stopped himself, as if forcing his own body to obey some rule of restraint. His hands trembled at his sides. "You don't remember me," he said quietly. It was not a question. Before she could answer, a small voice came from behind her. Torin, rubbing his eyes, peeked around her legs. "Mama? Who's that?" Kale's gaze dropped to the boy, and his entire body went still. Then, one by one, the other pups appeared, drawn by the voices, blinking sleepily in the doorway. 7 more faces, all different, yet all carrying threads of the same bloodline, the same sharp jaw, the same storm-colored eyes that Kale himself possessed. For a long moment, no one spoke. The rain fell harder. 8, Kale said, his voice breaking. "You had 8. Alira pulled her children closer instinctively, unsure why this stranger's shock made her chest ache. "I don't understand what is happening. Please, just tell me who you are." Kale dropped to one knee in the mud, bringing himself eye level with the pups, instead of towering over them. His voice gentler than Alira would have believed a king's voice could be. "My name is Kale. I was your mother's mate. I have been looking for her for 5 years." The words landed on Elira like stones thrown into still water, sending ripples through a mind she had thought was calm. "That's not possible," she said. "I have no mate. I would remember." "You lost your memory," Kale said. "I can see it in your eyes. You don't recognize me, but your wolf does. I felt it the moment I stepped near this house." He rose slowly, careful not to frighten the children. "5 years ago, during a border attack, you disappeared. We searched every part of our territory. My cousin told the pack you were killed, that there was nothing left to find. I refused to believe her, but eventually, even I ran out of places to look." "Celine," Bram said suddenly from the doorway, his voice sharp with realization. "The one who took the position of acting Luna after Elira vanished?" Kale's jaw tightened. "You know her?" "Elira came to us with no memory and near-fatal wounds," Bram said. "Wounds that did not look like they came from any enemy pack. They looked deliberate." The color drained from Kale's face as the pieces began falling into place, forming a picture darker than grief, darker than loss. Not an accident, not an enemy raid. Betrayal, wearing a familiar face. Elira listened to the exchange with her heart pounding, torn between disbelief and something aching and unfamiliar stirring beneath her ribs. She looked at this stranger who claimed to be her mate, then at her children, whose faces mirrored his so clearly it could not be denied. "I need time," she said finally, her voice trembling. "I have spent 5 years building a life for these pups. I cannot simply believe a stranger appeared out of the storm and undo everything I know." "I am not asking you to undo anything," Kale said. "I am asking you to let me stay close enough to prove it is true. I will not force you. I will not take the pups from you. I only ask for the chance to know them, and to make sure you are never in danger again." Something about the steadiness in his voice, the restraint in a king used to commanding rather than asking, softened the fear coiled in Elira's chest, if only slightly. That night, Kale did not return to his patrol. He stayed outside the small house in the rain, refusing shelter, saying only that he wanted to be near in case they needed him. In the morning, Elira found him exactly where he said he would be, soaked through, exhausted, and still watching her door like a man guarding the only thing that mattered. Over the following days, Kale proved patient in a way none of them expected from a king with his reputation. He did not push Elira to remember him. He did not demand the children call him anything they were not ready to say. He simply stayed, learning their names, their small habits, the way Torin always checked the windows before bed, and the way the twins, Ren and Sable, refused to eat unless they sat side by side. Slowly, fragments began returning to Elira. A flash of a wedding beneath moonlight, the warmth of a hand against her back, a voice singing softly to her, in a language of the old packs. Each memory arrived like a small physical shock, and each time, Kale was steady beside her, never rushing her grief or her confusion, simply present. It was Bram who eventually pulled Kale aside, away from the house, his expression grim. "There is something you should know," Bram said. "Elira told me once, before she lost most of her memory of you, that a woman had come to her in secret before the attack. A woman warning her that someone close to the throne wanted her gone. She never had time to tell anyone before the raid happened." Kale's hands curled into fists. "Celine." "I cannot prove it," Bram said, "but I believe it." "I can prove it," Kale said quietly. "If we go back and question the survivors properly, without my cousin controlling the narrative this time." Elira agreed to return to Blackthorn territory, though fear gripped her the entire journey. She had built her safety in isolation, returning to a pack, to a throne, to a title she did not remember holding, felt like walking willingly into fire. But watching her pups grow curious and excited about a father they were slowly beginning to trust, gave her the courage to take the risk. The return to the Blackthorn court caused an uproar. Whispers spread through the halls the moment Kale entered with Elira at his side, and 8 pups trailing behind them, wide-eyed at the grandeur of the world their mother had once belonged to. Celine's reaction was immediate and telling. She turned pale, then furious, insisting the woman before them was an imposter, a manipulator, seeking to steal a throne that was never hers to claim. "She has no memory of her own life," Celine said sharply to the gathered council. How can we trust anything she says? She does not need to remember everything, Cale said, his voice carrying easily through the hall. Her wolf recognized mine, the instant we stood near each other. The pups carry our bloodline undeniably. And there are witnesses who remember the warning given to her before the attack that nearly killed her. One by one, survivors from the original border raid came forward, each account slightly different, yet forming a pattern too consistent to be coincidence. A guard who had noticed Celine near the border the night before the attack, without explanation. A servant who overheard an argument between Celine and Alira weeks earlier about the succession. Bram's account of the wounds that did not match any enemy weapon used by outside packs. Celine's composure finally cracked beneath the weight of it all. She did not confess outright, but her attempts to explain away each piece of evidence grew weaker and more desperate, until the council no longer needed a confession to reach their judgment. She was stripped of her title and exiled from Blackthorn territory that same night, her ambitions collapsing as swiftly as they had once climbed. With the truth exposed, Cale turned to Alira in front of the entire court, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I do not care if your memories return slowly or not at all, he said. I fell in love with who you are now just as deeply as who you were before. You built a life out of nothing when everyone told you there was nothing left. You protected our children with a strength I do not think I could have matched. I am not asking you to be the Luna you were. I am asking you to be my mate now, as you are, for as long as you'll allow me to stand beside you. Alira looked at her children, safe and curious, and finally surrounded by people who wanted to protect rather than harm them. She looked at Bram, who offered her a small, understanding smile, at peace with stepping back now that he saw her found, and she looked at Cale, a king who had waited 5 years and asked for nothing in return but the chance to try again. I don't remember everything, she said softly. But I remember enough to know I am not afraid anymore. Cale pulled her close, and for the first time in 5 years, his wolf settled fully, as though a wound long left open had finally begun to heal. In the months that followed, Alira never fully regained every memory of her old life, but she did not need to. She built new ones instead, watching her 8 children grow up secure in a home no longer shadowed by fear or betrayal. Cale kept his promise fiercely, refusing to let politics, rivals, or old wounds ever threaten his family again. And every night, when the pups were finally settled and the house grew quiet, Cale would find Alira by the window, watching the stars the way she once had before she lost her memory, and he would wrap his arms around her, whispering the same vow each time, "No one will ever take you from me again," and this time, nothing ever did.